Well, good morning. Great to see you today, and warm welcome to Letchworth Garden City Church. If you joined us since we began our time together, you're joining us week 2 into a conversation we kick-started last week, looking at the book of Daniel, opening that book together, and we're doing that over 4 weeks, and just exploring that. We've called this series Living in Babylon, which we took some time to explain a little bit about last week and create some context around that. I want to spend just a few minutes, if I can, giving a little bit of a recap on that, but the absolute best thing that you can do if you missed that is go back online and listen to that, just as we kind of laid out and create some context around Babylon. What is that? We looked at Daniel chapter 1 together, and we're really asking this question together is, what does it look like for you and I, people who profess to be followers of Jesus? How do we do that in a world? How do we thrive in a world where it seems to me, and I'm sure to you, that there are lots of places and spaces that don't seem to honor God? What does it look like? None of us will have escaped our attention that over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we have seen a further decline of God and the word of God in schools, in government, in media, in all those sorts of different places. We've seen a moral corruption happen around our culture, and we are challenged by this as followers of Jesus. How do we live and honor Jesus in that world that we're called to live in? How do we become influencers and speak into that kingdom and into that culture rather than that culture dominating our lives? Am I talking to anybody who knows what I mean today? And so we're kind of asking this question: what does that look like to honor, to live a Jesus-centered life in a world that doesn't seem to honor Jesus and place him front and center and hold on to the things of God in high regard? And you may have noticed, but honoring God can be hard, right? Honoring God can be really tough when you think around your context of your family or your sports teams or your school context, whatever university context, whatever that might look like. Honoring God in those places can be really hard. And we kind of want to lean in. We want to learn from some people that have gone before us. We don't want to just learn from them, but actually as we do that, we apply some of the things that they applied in their context and learn what they did as they've gone before us. And so we've kind of been looking and committing ourselves over these next 4 weeks to have this conversation looking at the book of Daniel and learning not just from Daniel, but also his kind of 3 amigos, his mates that are alongside him. And we're going to kind of dive into them a little bit more today and discovering some more of their story. And when we talk about Babylon, because what happened is Babylon was a real place, it was a real nation, 6th century nation, and it existed, and it was conquered by, Israel was conquered by the people of Babylon. And so they took Daniel and his mates, they were taken, these were 15, 16-year-old boys, and they were taken. We think of war today, and many different countries have been ravaged by war, and it's destructive. That is exactly that kind of experience that Daniel and his mates had in this time, and they were taken captive to Babylon. And so they existed in that place. But actually for us, Babylon was much bigger than just a nation. In fact, as you read through scripture, you will see that Babylon was almost like a code word for a system, a world order that set itself up against the things of God. In fact, the New Testament referred to Rome as a place of Babylon. It was a place that was hostile actively against the things of God. And so we see Daniel, who's living in his Babylon, the real nation of Babylon, and we're asking, how did Daniel thrive in Babylon? How did he thrive? What were some of the things that he did, and his mindset and his heart, his faith, all those things? How did he lean into that but thrive in this place of Babylon? And so last week we introduced for this kind of series a broader definition of what we're kind of leaning into around what is Babylon. And you can see it on the screen behind me. And Babylon is environments where living for God puts you on the outside of the norm. Environments, maybe you want to think right now, and you can think in your mind that place where living for God puts you on the outside of what you feel like is the norm. You kind of feel like you're constantly pushing against the flow. You're going against what everyone else is. That kind of any place where you're living for him, living for Jesus, but it feels outside of the norm. And the reality is your Babylon is probably not your connect group. Let's hope it's not your connect group. Your Babylon more likely is your place of work. It could even be your family if you're the only Christian in your family, your extended family. It could be a kind of sports team, your friends that you've grown up with and known all your life. That could be a place where actually living for Jesus feels like it puts me on the outside of norm and what is norm around me. And so we kind of been looking around this definition. We've been asking a couple of questions that we kind of going to keep front and center over these 4 weeks. And there was 2 questions we looked at last week. One was, can you recognize when you're in Babylon? Can you recognize when you are in Babylon? And some of us are like, yeah, I know that place. I can feel that place. I kind of know it. I can think of it straight away. Maybe for some of us, we're not sure what it means to kind of recognize Babylon, and that idea of actually, I'm not sure when I'm on the outside of the things of God. I'm kind of not sure what those things look like. But actually, it's really important that for us who are followers of Jesus, who have surrendered our lives, we want to be Jesus followers, live a Jesus-centered life, that actually we understand what Jesus said. Because we understand what the culture, says about lots of things, and the culture can dominate. The culture can dominate our worldview, and particularly the younger we are, the more the culture can dominate our worldview. But actually, we need to fully understand, what does the Bible say about some of these key things? So when we're in Babylon, in that place that feels like we're living a Jesus-centered life, but it's against the norm, we know with clarity, what does the Word of God say about this? And we can begin to recognize when things are hostile or are against the flow of the things of God. And so, can you recognize when you're in Babylon? Second question is, how do you feel about Babylon? How do you feel about that place? Do you resist it? Is it like almost like when you're in that place and things are happening that are hostile to the things of God or contrary to the Word of God, there's like a righteous anger within you? And we kind of feel some of those things, and we want to do something about it. We want to shout. We want to tell people. We want to kind of speak the commands of Jesus over people. And maybe you're even sprinkling that place with oil. I don't know what you're doing, but we kind of feel like there's something within us that is trying to push against that place. Or maybe actually for some of us, we're just not sure. Maybe we're actually even just like, what's all the fuss about? What's all the fuss about? People need to kind of get over that and move past it. What do you feel? How do you feel when you come to that place of Babylon? And so last week we kind of looked at the story of Daniel and we explored that together. I'm going to kind of resist the temptation to go and recap that massively. But we discovered in Daniel that in Daniel chapter 1, that he had a resolve in his heart. There was a resolve that he kind of came to thrive in Babylon, to honor God. And this was kind of what we gathered around last week, was that no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to honor God. And he had this resolve within his heart that says, no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to follow God. He had this deep conviction within him, a conviction. He made this decision before even the point of decision had to be executed, that he was going to be somebody who was going to honor God above all things. I wonder today how many of us can say, hand on heart, we have that conviction. Above everything else, I'm going to fight to honor God. I'm going to honor him in all things. And so today I want us to dive into Daniel chapter 3. We're going to skip through Daniel chapter 2. We're going to land in Daniel chapter 3 today. If you've got your Bibles, you can turn them on, open them up, and we're going to land there a little bit today. But as you go in there are many times for me and as a pastor where I will sit and have conversations with people, and not every time, but there are certainly some times when you're having a conversation with someone and there might be like an unwise decision that's been made, and they've come and you're trying to have some counsel with them and offer some guidance and speak into that situation. And so you're having this kind of conversation with someone. And on occasions when you're having that kind of pastoral one-to-one or whatever it is, whatever that context is with that individual, there'll be a moment in the conversation where it kind of goes a little bit like, I know that's what you say you would do, but unless you were in my shoes, you don't know what you would do. In fact, actually, every one of us probably are really familiar with that. Perhaps we've had a moment in our Connect group or with a friend or a relative or maybe with a parent-child relationship, and you're kind of trying to speak some wisdom and some guidance, and they kind of come back to you and say, that's all well and good, but you don't know what you would do unless you're in my shoes. Until you're in that moment and you're confronted with the same circumstances I'm confronted with, that's when you will be able to say what you would do. And so we kind of have these conversations, and we can have thoughts and convictions and decisions about what we do in those moments. But in the actual moment, and for all of our theories, we don't know what we would actually do until we find ourselves in that moment. And the reality is this happens in lots of small things and lots of big things, doesn't it? Armchair sports fans do this all the time, don't they? You think about it. We sit there with our remote control and we are the experts in that moment of what that place should look like, or how they should make this work, or how they should do that, or they're not doing that right. And we kind of offer, and sports fans in the rooms are all nodding and laughing because we understand that we've all been in those places. I remember as before Danny and I, we got two kids, two girls, and before we were kind of parents, and we would kind of have discussions, and we would kind of have these theories of, when we have kids, that's how we're going to handle this situation, and that's how we're going to behave and respond in this way. And we kind of had some theories, and then we had children. And all your theories kind of go out the window. Any parents know exactly what I mean. And we kind of do these things. We have these resolves, we have these convictions, these thoughts, these decisions, and we kind of think how we would handle it, and then the actual moment comes when we handle it. And it might look a little bit different to what we first thought. Financial moments, where we have this thought and this conviction, I'll never get myself into debt. I'll never make that unwise a financial. I'll never do what my parents did, or what someone else did, or what that business partner did. I will never do that. And then you find yourself in a moment. I will never cheat a friend to get what I want. I will never manipulate a situation for my good. And then you're confronted with a moment. And you begin to discover in a moment what you'll actually do in that moment. And friends, we can have our theories, but until that moment comes, until that moment, someone will look at you and say, you don't know what you will do until you hit that moment. You don't know what you will do until you hit that moment. And there are moments in our lives, and I don't know if you've noticed, but not all moments are equal. There are moments in our lives, in fact, some of us here today, we're living in the consequences of a moment. A moment mistake, or a moment when we made a good choice, a good decision, and we're now living in the fruit of that good decision. There was a moment, and the reality for all of us is that there are revealing moments in our lives, and revealing moments are where the theory and the actual collide with one another. Revealing moments when what was theory collides with the actual, and it becomes this momentous moment in our lives. And in revealing moments, you discover who you really have faith in. In revealing moments, you discover something about yourself that you've probably perhaps never discovered before. In revealing moments, you discover what matters. Moments that reveal, actually, I thought integrity was a non-option, but seems to me integrity is optional. There are revealing moments when we realize my patience levels are not as strong as I thought they were. There are revealing moments when we find out actually how good a spouse or a friend we really are. There are revealing moments when they show us how serious we are about our faith, or actually are we just paying lip service. There are revealing moments where our theory and our actuals collide in those moments. And in revealing moments, we need a conviction, a resolve like Daniel that says, no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to follow God. That when I find myself in that revealing moment, this is how I will respond. Revealing moments say, will you fight to follow God? You think of you're 17 years old and you're out with some friends and you're out for a couple of drinks, and one of the friends says, hey, should we go back to my place? We go back to their place, and suddenly drinking becomes drugs. It's a revealing moment, isn't it? You're working with a colleague and suddenly a flirtatious text message comes. It's a revealing moment. There are revealing moments. And the question is asked to us, how will you respond in that revealing moment? And the more that you try to follow God and live and thrive in this place that we call Babylon, the more we're going to come face to face with revealing moments in our lives. In fact, right now, in this room, online, there are probably some of us, you're in a revealing moment right now. You just might not know it. But there are things happening around you, and there's a moment where you can go this way or that way, where you can live and act and behave and respond according to how culture says, or what does the Bible say? revealing moments that come our way. And so as we jump into Daniel chapter 3, as we look at this story together, and as we begin to unpack it, we'll see a revealing moment when literally the heat is turned up on their faith. The literal furnace is on and their faith, and they had to make a decision that will they believe what they actually believe, even if the outcome's going to cost them? Will they believe what they say they believe, even if the outcome will cost them? So let's dive into this together. We're not going to read it all verse by verse, but we're going to read a large chunk of this together. Daniel chapter 3. Maybe you want to go away and read this a little bit further for yourself later on today, but it says this. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar. We're just going to call him Neb, if that's okay. It will save us about 10 minutes overall. And I think that's what his friends called him anyway. So King Neb, he made an image of gold. If you read Daniel chapter 2, that will give you more context for the image. He had a dream of this image, and now he's made this image a reality. So he had an image of gold, 60 cubits high, 6 cubits wide. It was tall. Okay, that's the most I can say about that. And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned, and basically what we've got then is a list of kind of local leaders that he invites, okay? So prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, the list kind of probably went on. And not just does he invite all these leaders, he invites all the people as well, okay? So there is a large gathering that is happening at this point. And so he gathers them all together and to the officials to come to the dedication of the image that he had set up. Look at verse 4. Then the herald, that's not the newspaper, okay? Then the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, is that how you pronounce that? Lyre, harp, we'll go with it, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Neb has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Dare I say, this has the potential to be a revealing moment. This has all the markings of a revealing moment, what is about to happen here. I wonder, before we get into the story, and some of you are already there because you know it, I wonder how you would respond in this situation. I wonder how you would respond if this was your life on the line. I wonder how you would respond if the same question was being asked of you. Bow down to this image. If you don't, there's a furnace waiting for you, ready to welcome you. I wonder what our theory would be in this moment. I wonder if our theory is, Carl, I will stand firm. I will fight. In fact, I won't just stand firm and fight. I'm going to go on the front foot and I'm going to tell them all about Jesus. I wonder what our theory becomes in this moment. And so let's read on. It says that verse 7, it says, therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn and all the kind of instruments, I think you could probably chuck a tambourine in there as well, all kinds of music, listen to this, all the nations and peoples of every language. Just pause there a second. That moment right there, all the nations and peoples of every language, that is a prophetic picture of the end times right there. A moment when every tongue, every nation, every person will bow down, not to an image of gold, but to the person and name of Jesus Christ. So here in this moment, don't miss it, there's a prophetic picture here of the end times. And he says, nations, peoples of every language, they fell down. Instead of worshiping Jesus, it says they worshiped the image of gold that King Neb had set up. You're talking here thousands of people. Literally thousands. Imagine just a sea. Have you ever been to kind of those concerts and there's just thousands and thousands of people? Imagine every one of them just bowing to this image of gold. Pow, pow, pow. Every one of them. The music goes, boom, boom, boom. They all go. They all bow down to this moment. And you see what happens. I'm just going to summarize the next couple of verses for time. But what happens is there are 3 astrologers. And the 3 astrologers, they get their binoculars out and they're scanning the land of Babylon. And they're looking to see, has every person followed this command? And as they begin to scan the land, they see that there are 3 men who have not bowed down. And so the 3 astrologers, or we could call them the 3 snitches, they go to King Neb and they say, Neb, this is the command that you gave. You gave this command, didn't you, King Neb? Yes, I gave that command. Well, there are 3 guys that you need to know about. And the astrologers, they told King Neb about these three men, and he begins to sing. We see his reaction in verse 13. You can jump down there with me. So verse 13, it says, furious with rage. Furious with rage. Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, verse 14, and Neb said to them, is it true? Is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I have set up? Now when you hear the sound, here we go again, all the instruments and the tambourine, if you're ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you'll be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? This is a pretty revealing moment for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This is a moment for them. If you like, King Neb is almost giving them another chance. I wonder if he's giving them another chance because of everything that had happened in Daniel chapter 1. In Daniel chapter 1, if you remember last week, and there was this kind of moment where Daniel and his mates, they went to King Neb and they went to do the official. They're kind of like, hey, we can't eat the food. And Neb's probably kind of looking at him saying, do you know what? You guys didn't eat the food I wanted. You've eaten vegetables. You're looking pretty good. You're pretty trim. The six-pack's looking really good by now. Actually, do you know what? I like what you did back then. I'm going to give you another chance. And so he gives them another go. And he says, if you bow down to the image of gold, it's going to go okay for you, but if you don't, here's what is awaiting you. And so in this moment, we see how they respond. And he's basically saying, hey, your music plays, you bow. You don't bow, you die. Simples. That's kind of how this is going. But let's see how they respond. In fact, this is an incredible response. It's like a mic drop moment, if you like, for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And how, in many ways, we should all respond in revealing moments. It says that they replied to him, King Neb, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. What an incredible response. We don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. In other words, I think what they're saying is, we don't need to pray about this. We don't need a committee meeting. We don't even need to set up a WhatsApp group to have a little discussion amongst one another about how we should respond to this situation. Because we've already resolved in our hearts before we even got to this moment how we would respond. We don't need to think about this. I don't need to call my mates and my intercessors. I don't need to get on my knees because I've already resolved in my heart how I'm going to respond when it comes to this moment. I've already got that conviction. I've made that decision that no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to honor God. It's already within me. And so, King Neb, you can put your threats, you can tell me the consequences, but I've already made my mind up. I've already made a decision within me. Look at verse 17. I love this verse. If we are thrown, this is them responding still, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve, listen to the language here, is able. Say able for me. Able. The God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will. He will deliver us from your majesty's hands. What confidence they've got in God. That not only to believe that my God is able, because I've seen him do it before, but I believe he will. My God is not just able, he will deliver me through this situation. Whatever you're journeying through right now, may you know that not only is your God able, but he will deliver you through it. Because that's who he is. That's who he is. It's the kind of person he is. And maybe some of you right now, you need to kind of speak that kind of faith over your situation. Maybe your situation right now feels hopeless. Your marriage feels like it's at a dead end. You've got some tensions that you're walking through, some financial uncertainty. Right now, maybe just even speak over that situation. Not only is my God able, but he will deliver me through this. So they speak with confidence over this situation. But you've got to see the next verse. I love this. Verse 18. In fact, this next part is a model for all of us. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, with all the love and respect in the world, with all the love of King Neb for what you're doing here and everything that's going on, we want you to know we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Remember, we think these guys are about 15 or 16 years old. 15 or 16-year-olds, do you know? Verse 19. Come on, let's read a few more here. It says, then Neb was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. His attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie them up, throw them into the furnace. So these men, they were wearing robes, trousers, turbans, other clothes, were bound, thrown into the furnace. The king's command was so urgent that the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took them there. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Verse 24, then King Neb leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? He kind of has a little conversation with his soldiers around him and says, I'm sure we put 3 in there. I'm not going crazy, am I? And he's kind of looking for some assurances from them. And they're like, certainly, Your Majesty. I mean, why would they argue with him? And he said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods. This side of redemptive history, we know it doesn't just look like one of the sons of gods, it was Jesus himself. Jesus was there. In this moment that they were there, Jesus showed up. In your moment when the heat is turned up on your faith, church, guess what? Jesus will show up. He shows up in these revealing moments. And so Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace. I mean, that's fairly brave. Some of his soldiers have just died. And he shouted to them, servants of the Most High God. He's changed his tune, hasn't he? He's changed his tune. Servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So they came out of the fire. And then all the officials who were there, who were gathered, were crowded around them. They saw the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their head singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. You cannot miss the gospel picture here. You cannot miss the picture of the gospel in this story. That when we should have been judged for our sin, Jesus showed up and took the heat so that we would not be scorched, so that we would not smell of our sin. But because of Jesus and what he did on the cross, we only smell of the sweet fragrance of Jesus and his forgiving grace and love over our lives. Amen. You cannot miss the gospel story here, pointing to what Jesus has done and continues to do in and through our lives. Not even the smell of smoke was on them. Should we finish the story? Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God. I mean, you've got to laugh at this, haven't you? To the God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. Look at this. They trusted him. They trusted him. In their revealing moments, their faith did not remain a theory. In their revealing moments, they said, God, I trust you. I wonder how you respond in your revealing moments. I wonder how you respond in those revealing moments. Do we trust him? I mean, really trust him. It says here they trusted him, defied the king's commands, were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. And then he says, King Neb says, therefore I decree that the people of any nation, language, who say anything against the God of these men be cut into pieces, their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. King Neb loves his severe punishments, doesn't he? You don't want to get on the wrong side of this guy. What does it mean for us to trust God? I want to finish up and leave you with this thought. I want to leave you with this thought. It's a simple sentence, and actually in many ways it's a simple sentence and an easy sentence to say, but to live out is very difficult. Obedience is up to me, and the results are up to him. Obedience is up to me, and the results are up to God. You see, obedience is when we resolve in our hearts, I will fight to honor God. Obedience is when we resolve that deep conviction within us, not just in revealing moments, but Monday through Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the way through, 24 hours, 7 days a week. I will resolve in my heart that I will fight to follow God. I will honor him. I will trust him. And as culture, and society, as it turns up the heat and the pressure, as culture turns up around our lives, as literally the heat around us and the opposition to our faith and the opposition to us saying that we're going to honor God, and maybe there's a hostile environment right now that you're in and you can't even speak about the things of God. You can't even talk about, like, when people say, what did you do on Sunday? You kind of skirt around the issue and you say, well, I did this, and you avoid everything but what you did in the morning, or something that's so central and key to your life, and you feel like if you do, you're just going to get hit with this opposition. It feels like the heat is being turned up on those things. When the heat is turned up and the pressure comes, it's this resolve in my heart: I will be obedient to God. I will be obedient. I will remain obedient to him, and the results, the consequences, what happens is up to God. What happens as a result of me being obedient is not within my control. That is his domain. My domain is to remain obedient. My response in every situation is to be someone who commits myself to being obedient to the faith of God. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's okay, because I resolve in my heart, I will live by faith, not by sight. That's the resolve within me. And I trust God. I take him at his word. I trust that he is good. We've sung it forever this morning. He is good. And so, church, I've got to ask today as we come into close, do we have this kind of faith? Do we have this kind of faith that does demonstrate that we live by faith, not by sight? Do we have this kind of faith that when the heat is turned up, that we've resolved within our hearts that I will honor God, I will be obedient to him? And maybe that's stuff that's real challenging right now. You think around friendship circles, and maybe you've got some friends, and the lifestyle of those people, you kind of think, well, that's not honoring to God. And you kind of think, well, I'm not going to associate, because actually I'm going to fight to honor God. And I don't know what that means for this friendship group, but I have to be obedient to God. I can't give way to those things. And so I'm going to say I'm going to be obedient to God. I'm going to be faithful to him. And if the consequence is that I lose that group of friends, well, obedience is up to me. The results are up to God. You think about business. If you're going into business opportunities or a new startup and you're going along with somebody and you say, well, God, in my business, I'm going to fight to honor you. But maybe you've got people you're working alongside and they've got suspect ways of doing business or thinking about things. And you're like, I need to be obedient to God. So I'm going to resolve, I'm going to be obedient to him. I'm going to fight to honor God. And the results, what happens? Well, that's not me. That's God. That's his domain. That's his area. But for me, I'm going to fight to honor God. And you see, church, the heart of the Christian has to be for the person of God, not the perks of God. I think too many times we're chasing the perks of God. But actually, this sense of journeying in obedience is just like, God, I need you. I need you more than anything else. God, I need you more than I need the business to go well. God, I need you more than I need that friendship. God, I need you more than that area of sports that I give myself to and so much to. God, I need you more than that. And so before anything else, God, if I have you, then I've got everything I need. So I'm going to remain obedient to you above everything and anything and anyone else, because I'm going to resolve in my heart that no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to follow God in every situation. So Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they didn't need money or comfort. They just needed God. And guess what? He showed up. He showed up. And there were some things that they did. I wonder if the worship team would come back. You see, there were some things in their hearts that they had predetermined. There were three things in their lives that they understood to be true, no matter what seemed to be happening around them. Number one was, God is the answer. Whatever the question, God is the answer. Do you ever remember the program, Chris Tarrant, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Man, I love that program. And there was always a moment in that kind of TV series every week where you would kind of have the options of the questions, and then you'd give your answer to whatever the question kind of was. And Chris Tarrant would say to me, is that your final answer? I wonder in your revealing moment what your final answer is. I wonder in your revealing moment, what's your final answer? You see, for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their final answer was, God, we trust you. We trust you. That's how we can be obedient to you, because we trust you. They knew that God is the answer. The second thing is that God will be kind. That actually God was a God, he was a father that they could count on. Church, you have a Father in heaven that you can count on. He loves you. He loves you so much. John 3:16 says that he sent his one and only Son to die on the cross for you. It's how much he loves you. And then the third thing they resolved in their heart was that God is still good no matter what. No matter what, God is still good. Even if we still know he's good, no matter what he does, how he does it, he's still a good Father. And church, trusting God as we live in Babylon is a really important place to get to. That says, I will trust him and will be obedient to him. And I'm okay leaving the results up to him, because I will trust him. So come on, I wonder if you would stand with me. I said earlier on that some of you are in a revealing moment right now. If that's you and you're in that revealing moment right now, I want you to do something really brave. Would you just lift your hands for me? If you just sense right now where you are in life, maybe it's just the cycle of life you're in right now, the context, the situation, and you just feel, I'm in a revealing moment right now. Would you just be really brave? Would you just lift your hands with me? I'm just going to leave that just a few more seconds. Is there anyone else? If you're online, maybe you just want to type in the comments, say, hey, that's me. If you're around some of those people, I don't want you to touch them, but I would wonder, would you just stretch your hands out towards them? Because actually what this is there's a God moment here, and there's a God moment for these individuals. And so I want us just to pray. In fact, would you do it? Would you just pray your best prayer over them for the next 30 seconds? God, in their revealing moment, may they trust you. God, I pray right now in their revealing moment that they won't just have theory, but Lord, actually what they'll have is a real demonstration of what they believe to be true come out. So God, right now, I pray for those online in the room, watching down the line, whoever they are. I pray right now, in their revealing moment, will they come out the other side saying, God, we trusted you. We trust you. And I wonder right across this room right now as we close, with just every person, maybe you need to predetermine in your heart right now, saying, God, I'm going to trust you. In my revealing moment, I'm going to trust you. Why don't you just make that declaration before him right now? Come on, every one of us, just lift your voice right now and say, God, I'm going to trust you. In my revealing moment, I'm going to trust you. Forgive me when my faith has just been theory. When those two things collide, God, I pray, would you help me to be person? Resolves in my heart, no matter when, no matter where, no matter with who, I will fight to honor God. I will be obedient to you, God. Obedience is up to me, and the results are up to you. Amen? Amen, amen. Come on, let's sing.